Blood on the front porch. A pacemaker ripped from the wall and left behind like a warning. A dog that never barked. Cameras smashed, timestamps erased, and a door that opened. 84-year-old widow who raised 3 children alone. A woman who never missed Sunday church. Gone. Vanished without a trace somewhere between 2:28 in the morning and sunrise. And the person who took her? Still out there. Still watching. Still breathing free air while a family falls apart on national television. This is not a cold case. This is happening right now. The mother of one of the most recognizable faces in American news has been ripped from her home, and 13 days into the investigation, there are no arrests, no confirmed proof of life, no answers, just a masked figure on a grainy doorbell camera and a family on their knees begging for mercy. This is Cold Case Solved. And before we go any further, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications. Because we don't let cases go quiet. We stay on them until we get answers. And we are not letting go of Nancy Guthrie. Before I go any deeper into this, and trust me, it gets darker, smash that like button right now. It takes 1 second and it tells the algorithm this story matters. The more eyes on this case, the more pressure on law enforcement to move faster. Every view, every like, every share is someone else who might recognize that masked figure. So do it now. Like this video. And let's get into it. Nancy Ellen Guthrie was born on January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky. She turned 84 years old just 4 days before she vanished. 4 days. She was a widow. Her husband, Charles, died of a heart attack at 49 during a mining trip in Mexico back in 1988. Nancy did not collapse under that grief. She stood up, squared her shoulders, and raised 3 children on her own, Annie, Savannah, and Cameron. If you recognize the name Savannah, you should. She is the co-anchor of NBC's Today Show. One of the most visible journalists in America. But to Nancy, she was just her daughter. After her children were grown, Nancy built a quiet, purposeful life in Tucson, Arizona. She worked in public relations at the University of Arizona for 17 years. She attended St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church without fail. She volunteered. She prayed. She showed up. Every single Sunday. By every account, friends, neighbors, church members, colleagues, she was sharp as a tack. No dementia. No confusion. Just a faithful, warm, fiercely loving woman living her best years in the Catalina foothills. But Nancy had vulnerabilities. She had a pacemaker. She had chronic heart conditions. She took daily medication she could not survive without. And she had limited mobility, she could walk maybe 50 yards on her own. No more than that. She lived alone in a burnt adobe home near East Skyline Drive and North Campbell Avenue, in an unincorporated area north of Tucson, Pima County jurisdiction, not Tucson police. That distinction, as we will come back to, matters enormously. This was not a woman who could run. This was not a woman who could fight her way out. She was someone who trusted the people around her. And someone exploited every single one of those facts. Saturday evening, January 31, 2026. At 5:32 in the afternoon, Nancy takes an Uber to her daughter Annie's house for dinner. Annie is married to Tommaso Sion, 50 years old, born June 18, 1975, in San Giovanni Valdarno, Tuscany, Italy. He is a 6th grade and AP biology teacher at Basis Oro Valley School in Tucson. They have 1 son together. They have been married since September 2006. Dinner is uneventful. Nothing remarkable. A normal evening between a mother, a daughter, and a son-in-law. Then at approximately 9:48 in the evening, Tommaso drives Nancy home. Her garage door opens at 9:48 and closes at 9:50. Tommaso leaves. Nancy is alone inside her house. That is the last confirmed moment anyone who loved her saw her alive. Now watch what happens over the next several hours. 1:47 in the morning, February 1st. Nancy's Google Nest doorbell camera disconnects. Not a glitch. Not a power surge. Physically disconnected. Someone ripped it off the wall. 2:12 in the morning. The camera software, still running residual processes even without an active cloud connection, detects a person. The device is offline but something in its backup systems is still sensing movement. 2:28 in the morning. Nancy's pacemaker app disconnects from her phone. That is the outer edge of the window. At that moment, she is either unconscious, restrained, or already gone from that house. 11:56 in the morning, February 1st. Family members arrive because Nancy missed a virtual church service with a friend earlier that morning. She never missed church. Never. So they went to check on her. Her phone is there. Her wallet is there. Her medications are there. Her car is there. Her dog is there. Nancy is not. 12:03 in the afternoon, 911 is called. Within hours, Pima County Sheriff's Department deputies are on scene. Within 24 hours, this shifts from a missing person case to a full criminal investigation. And by February 2nd, Sheriff Chris Nanos is standing in front of cameras telling reporters the words that made everyone's blood run cold. Nancy did not leave voluntarily. She could not have walked far on her own. This is a crime scene. Let's talk about what investigators found inside and around that house, because the physical evidence tells a story, and if you know how to read it, that story reveals exactly what kind of person did this. Start with the blood. Nancy's blood, confirmed by DNA testing, was found on the front porch, with a trail leading from inside the house toward the back door. Not a pool. Not a splatter. A trail. Individual droplets. That pattern is consistent with someone walking while bleeding from a wound on the upper body, face, or head. She was upright, or semi-upright, and moving. She was not dragged unconscious. At least, not initially. The amount of blood is limited. This is not a scene of extreme violence. No stabbing, no shooting, no beating that left her on the floor. This is controlled injury. A single strike to subdue her. A fall during a struggle. Possibly trauma from the pacemaker being disabled. We do not know exactly. But what we do know is she was bleeding and she was mobile enough to move from inside to outside. And then she was gone. Now the pacemaker. This is the detail that haunts everyone in this investigation. Pacemakers are implanted under the skin, usually below the collarbone. They are connected to the heart via leads, thin wires that run through veins directly into the cardiac muscle. To remove one safely, you need a surgical suite, anesthesia, sterile instruments, and medical expertise. To remove one forcibly, you are tearing leads from a human heart. The trauma would be catastrophic. There would be massive bleeding. She would likely be dead within minutes. But the blood trail was limited. So the pacemaker was not surgically ripped out of her chest. What actually happened? The app disconnected. There are a few possibilities. The kidnapper disabled the device externally, using equipment specifically designed to interfere with pacemaker signals, which exist and are not impossible to obtain. Or they damaged the external casing without fully removing the implant. Or her phone was moved away from the device, severing the Bluetooth connection, and the investigators found the phone still inside the house, which suggests the device itself lost connectivity. But here is the question no one can stop asking. Why leave the pacemaker behind? If you remove or disable a device that is keeping someone alive, why leave it at the scene? It is evidence. It is a forensic landmark. It screams, "Look at me. Look what I did." Unless that is exactly the point. Unless leaving it behind was a message. A demonstration of power. This is how much control I have. This is how helpless she is. And that profile, someone who wants to be feared, someone who wants credit, does not match the transactional logic of a ransom kidnapping. That contradiction is one of the deepest mysteries in this case. Now the cameras. Nancy had a Google Nest doorbell camera and internal security cameras. All were disabled. The doorbell was physically ripped off the wall. The interior cameras were smashed. But here is what the suspect did not do. They did not cut power to the house. They did not disable the Wi-Fi router. They did not jam signals. They went camera by camera and destroyed them by hand. That is amateur work. A professional would have cut power from outside, one action, everything goes dark. Or better yet, they would have entered through a blind spot, a corner the cameras could never see. Instead, this person walked directly to the front door, stood in plain view of the doorbell camera, and tried to block it with their hand. When that failed, they grabbed a potted plant from a nearby planter and shoved it in front of the lens. When that also failed, they ripped the entire unit off the wall. That is improvisation. That is problem solving under pressure in real time. That is not someone who has done this before. But they knew the cameras were there. They came ready to deal with them. They knew the layout of the house. They knew which door to approach. They knew Nancy had a pacemaker. They knew her routine well enough to know she would be home alone that night. This was planned. This was researched. This was personal. On February 10th, the FBI released the doorbell footage to the public. Black and white. Grainy. Nighttime conditions. A masked figure approaches Nancy's front door, deliberate, methodical, not rushed. They are wearing a black ski mask, vinyl gloves, and carrying what analysts later identified as a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack. That is a Walmart exclusive brand. Cheap. Widely available. Essentially untraceable. You can see a holstered firearm on the figure's body. The FBI did not simply enhance this footage. They reconstructed the scene. They went back to Nancy's home at night, erected a blackout tent to eliminate ambient light, and recreated the exact lighting conditions the camera had recorded under. They brought in mannequins dressed in matching clothing. They tested different heights, different builds, different backpack configurations. They measured the figure's proportions against known reference points, the door frame, the porch railing, the planter, and from that analysis, they generated the suspect description. Male. Approximately 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 inches tall. Average build. Here is where the story gets complicated. Multiple observers, including people with law enforcement backgrounds, have noted that Tommaso Cyan, the last known person to see Nancy alive, appears significantly taller than 5 feet 9 or 10. If that is accurate, he is physically inconsistent with the masked figure captured on camera. But being taller than the masked figure does not rule out involvement. It simply means he may not have been the person who stood at that door. There is a second sighting. Witnesses reported seeing a figure in a gray hoodie and jeans carrying 2 backpacks about 4 miles from Nancy's home at 1:52 in the morning. Given that the pacemaker did not disconnect until 2:28, this sighting is before the abduction. Who is this person? What is in the backpacks? Investigators are still trying to find out. Additional evidence recovered, a pair of black gloves found approximately 1.5 miles from Nancy's home. Sent to the lab for DNA analysis. Results not yet public. Those gloves could solve this case. We will come back to why they haven't yet. Let me be clear about something before we go further, because this is important. No one has been named as a suspect by any law enforcement agency in this case. Not officially. Not publicly. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has stated repeatedly, and I am paraphrasing here, that investigators have not identified a suspect or person of interest. Sheriff Nanos himself confirmed no suspects were identified while stating no one has been ruled out. Now let's talk about who the internet has decided is guilty, and then let's talk about what we actually know. Tommaso Cian. He was the last known person to see Nancy alive. He drove her home. His vehicle's proximity to the house in the final confirmed window is documented by digital records. He has power of attorney over Nancy's finances, a common arrangement for aging parents, but a fact that draws scrutiny. The FBI searched his and Annie's home on February 4th. They returned on February 8th. A vehicle was towed from the property. Law enforcement was observed inside with bright flashes consistent with forensic photography. Annie's car was reportedly impounded. Annie deleted or privatized Facebook photos featuring Tommaso around that same date. And Tommaso has not appeared in any of the family's public video appeals. He has not been seen publicly for over a week as of February 9th. He has made no statements to the press. That is what we know. What we do not know, whether he has been formally named as a suspect internally by investigators. Whether any evidence collected from his home connects him to the crime. Whether he is cooperating with investigators or has invoked his right to remain silent. Whether his actual height definitively excludes him as the masked figure. Whether the power of attorney arrangement involved any financial irregularities. What is pure speculation, that he is the prime suspect. That he committed the abduction. That the masked figure is him. That he had financial motive to harm Nancy. Almost all of that originates from a single journalist, NewsNation's Ashley Banfield, who claimed on her podcast between February 3rd and 4th that a quote highly regarded law enforcement source described Tommaso as, and again I am paraphrasing, potentially the prime suspect. TMZ and entertainment outlets amplified this claim immediately. But not one official law enforcement agency has corroborated it. Not the FBI. Not the Pima County Sheriff. Nobody. If Tommaso Cian is involved, investigators know it by now. They have had 13 days. They have searched his home twice. They have impounded vehicles. If there were enough evidence to charge him, he would be in custody. He is not. So either the evidence is not sufficient yet, or he is not the person responsible. The internet has already convicted him. And that is a problem regardless of his guilt or innocence. Online communities have also focused on a man named Dominic Evans, the drummer in Tommaso's Tucson-based band, Early Black. Why? Because some observers believe his physical build resembles the masked figure in the footage. And because he reportedly has a prior criminal history involving felony charges. But Dominic Evans has not been named by any law enforcement agency in this investigation. Not as a suspect. Not as a person of interest. What we have there is social media speculation dressed up as detective work. The only other person detained in this case is a delivery driver from Rio Rico named Carlos Palos, a town approximately 60 miles south of Tucson near the Mexican border. He was pulled over during a traffic stop on February 10th, hours after the FBI released the doorbell footage. His home was searched. He was questioned for approximately 8 hours. Then he was released without charges. He told reporters he had never heard of Nancy Guthrie. Law enforcement has effectively ruled him out. Hold on. Stop scrolling. If you are still watching at this point, drop a comment right now that says, "I'm still here." Let's see who is truly following this story. Because what comes next, the ransom notes, the Bitcoin transactions, the evidence sitting in an evidence locker going cold, it gets even more disturbing. Stay with me. Multiple ransom communications have surfaced in this case. None have been officially authenticated. None have been confirmed as originating from the actual kidnapper. But they have shaped the investigation and the family's response in ways that matter. Around February 2nd or 3rd, emails were sent to the entertainment news outlet TMZ and 2 Tucson television stations, KOLD and KGUN. The demand, $6 million in Bitcoin, transferred to a specific wallet address. The deadline, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, February 5. That deadline passed. No payment was confirmed. No contact followed. A second deadline was set for February 9. That deadline also passed. Still nothing. February 5, TMZ's Harvey Levin reported receiving a letter claiming Nancy is alive and frightened. Authenticity, unknown. Law enforcement has not verified it. February 11, TMZ received a third note, this time from someone claiming to know the kidnapper's identity, demanding 1 Bitcoin, worth approximately $66,000 to $70,000 at the time, transferred to a different wallet address. February 12, the same person followed up with a second message saying they were not being taken seriously. A retired FBI agent who analyzed the original ransom note flagged a specific linguistic detail. The note used the abbreviation USD. Americans almost never write that. We say dollars. The use of USD suggests either a foreign author or someone deliberately constructing the appearance of being foreign. That is a tell. That is a clue embedded in the syntax. The demand for Bitcoin is also significant. Bitcoin transactions are recorded permanently on a public ledger called the blockchain. Law enforcement has tools to trace blockchain activity. They can see when money moves, identify exchange wallets where cryptocurrency is converted to cash, and at that point, they have names, accounts, and addresses. Demanding Bitcoin is not the untraceable crime people imagine it to be. And anyone sophisticated enough to set up a Bitcoin wallet should know that. Which raises a legitimate question: is the ransom demand genuine, or is it misdirection? Now here is what makes this even more complex. The Guthrie family confirmed that at least 1 Bitcoin transaction was made to the original ransom wallet address around 5 o'clock in the afternoon on February 11. The amount was not disclosed. Who sent it? The family? An anonymous benefactor? The kidnapper themselves staging the appearance of activity? A scammer testing the waters? We do not know. And the FBI stated as of February 9 that it was not aware of any continued communication between the Guthrie family and suspected kidnappers, though that statement predates the February 11 transaction. The timing pattern of the ransom notes is also troubling. They arrived within 24 to 48 hours of the abduction, suggesting the kidnapper had the emails prepared in advance. But then when the deadlines passed, nothing happened. No escalation. No proof of harm. No new instructions. No negotiation. Just silence. That is not how ransom kidnappings typically work. When a deadline passes, kidnappers increase pressure. They provide evidence. They set new terms. The silence points in one of 3 directions. The notes were fabricated by someone with no connection to Nancy. The kidnapper panicked at the scale of the FBI response and went quiet, or the ransom was never the real motive and the notes were designed to send investigators in the wrong direction. One man was arrested for exploiting this tragedy. Derek Calella, 42 years old, from Hawthorne, California. On February 4, the same day the Guthrie family released their first public video appeal, Calella sent fake ransom texts to Annie Guthrie and Tommaso. His message implied a Bitcoin transaction had been received. Authorities traced the line back to his Gmail account and home address. When questioned, he admitted he had been following the story on television and had pulled family contact information from an internet source. He had no knowledge of Nancy's whereabouts. He had no involvement whatsoever. He was simply a predator circling a family's worst moment. He was charged with transmitting a demand for ransom in interstate commerce and misuse of a telecommunications device, federal charges. He appeared in court and was released before trial on a $20,000 bond with electronic monitoring and travel restrictions. The FBI publicly called him a grief profiteer. And this was not even his first offense. In October 2025, the Los Angeles County District Attorney had already named him among 13 county employees charged with stealing over $430,000 in unemployment benefits. Derek Calella is not connected to Nancy's disappearance. He is simply evidence of how quickly vultures arrive when tragedy is visible. Here is where this story takes a turn that should make every person watching this furious. The FBI deployed enormous resources to this case. Hundreds of agents. A 24-hour command post in Tucson. Crisis management specialists flown in from Quantico. Digital forensics teams working directly with Google engineers to extract residual data from systems the suspect believed were dead. Video analysis units reconstructing the crime scene in a blackout tent. Behavioral analysts. Linguists. The complete apparatus of the most powerful domestic law enforcement agency on Earth, aimed at finding one 84-year-old woman. And then Sheriff Chris Nanos blocked them. On February 12, Reuters broke the story. The Pima County Sheriff was refusing to allow the FBI to process critical physical evidence at Quantico, specifically, the gloves recovered 1.5 miles from Nancy's home, and DNA samples collected from the crime scene. The FBI wanted the evidence sent to their National Crime Lab in Quantico, Virginia, the finest forensic facility in the country. Sheriff Nanos said no. He wanted it sent instead to DNA Labs International, a private commercial laboratory in Fort Myers, Florida, under existing contract with Pima County, at an estimated cost of around $200,000. His stated reason: consistency. He wants all evidence processed by the same lab. The FBI's response, as reported through an unnamed federal official: this approach risks further slowing a case that grows more urgent by the minute. Former federal prosecutors and FBI agents went public almost immediately. Nancy Grace called the decision unconscionable on air. Megyn Kelly devoted a full segment to it. The argument is simple: why would you not use the best forensic lab in the world when an elderly woman's life is hanging by a thread? The criticism from insiders is sharper. They say this is not about consistency. It is about jurisdiction. It is about a local sheriff who does not want to be overshadowed by federal agents. It is about ego. And if that assessment is accurate, then ego, one man's need for control over his patch of desert, may be the reason Nancy Guthrie is not found in time. This is not even the first misstep in the sheriff's management of this scene. Early in the investigation, the Pima County Sheriff's Department released Nancy's home back to the family before completing forensic work. Then they had to return, re-enter the scene, and collect additional evidence. That is contamination protocol failure. That is a procedural error in a kidnapping investigation. It happened. Meanwhile, the FBI continues doing everything it legally can within the constraints imposed by local jurisdiction. The reward has been raised from $50,000 to $100,000. Digital billboards with Nancy's photo and the suspect description are running in Los Angeles, Phoenix, Dallas-Fort Worth, and Albuquerque. Agents are canvassing neighborhoods door to door. The tip lines have received over 18,000 reports to local authorities and over 13,000 to the FBI, 31,000 pieces of information being processed simultaneously. Most will be dead ends. But somewhere in those 31,000 tips is the one that matters. Savannah Guthrie is 53 years old. She has been the co-anchor of the Today Show since 2012. Before that, she was NBC's legal correspondent. Before that, a practicing attorney. She has interviewed sitting presidents, covered landmark Supreme Court decisions, broken major national stories. She has spent her entire career asking the hard questions. Now she is the story. On February 4, 3 days after her mother disappeared, Savannah stood in front of a camera with her siblings Annie and Cameron. Her face was hollowed out. Her voice was steady but cracking at its edges. She spoke directly to whoever had her mother. She described Nancy as a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman, a beautiful spirit who volunteers at her church, who never misses a service, who is beloved by everyone who knows her. She begged whoever had her to reach out. She said all they wanted was to know she was okay. That video was viewed millions of times. No contact followed. No ransom call. No proof of life. Just silence. February 7th. The family released a second video. This one was addressed directly to the kidnapper. They acknowledged receiving a communication. They acknowledged understanding what was being demanded. They said they were ready to pay. They asked to be told how. Think about what that means, a family broadcasting their willingness to pay $6 million to a kidnapper who may or may not be listening. Silence. February 9th. Savannah alone. She looked like she had not slept since January 31st. She spoke about desperation. She spoke about the reward. She asked for anyone with any information to come forward. February 10th. She shared the doorbell footage. One line, someone out there recognizes this person. February 12th. A home video montage. Nancy smiling at family dinners. Nancy laughing. Nancy living her full beautiful life before it was taken from her. Savannah's words beneath it, our lovely mom. We will never give up on her. Through all of this, Savannah suspended her career entirely. She was not on the Today Show. She was not covering the Winter Olympics opening ceremony, which she had been scheduled to co-host. She is a journalist who has dedicated 30 years to bearing witness to other people's stories. Now she is living inside one that she cannot report her way out of. Then there is Annie. Annie is Nancy's oldest daughter. She is married to Tommaso. The FBI has searched her home twice. A vehicle has been impounded from her property. Her husband has not appeared in the family videos. He has made no public statements. And Annie herself has been completely silent. Think about what position that puts her in. If she defends Tommaso, she appears complicit. If she distances herself from him, she potentially condemns a man who may be innocent, destroys her marriage, and tears her family apart. There is no good option. So she says nothing. And that silence, in a case where every detail is being analyzed, speaks in volumes. President Trump called Savannah on February 4th and offered the full resources of federal law enforcement. The White House posted about the case publicly. On February 7th, aboard Air Force One, Trump told reporters he believed there were very strong clues and that answers would be coming fairly soon. As of 13 days in, those answers had not come. FBI Director Kash Patel appeared on Fox News on February 10 claiming substantial progress and stating there were multiple persons of interest. When pressed for specifics, he offered none. Former FBI agents commenting publicly called this typical. You do not reveal case details during an active investigation. But for a family with no proof of life and no contact from the kidnapper, reassurance without substance can feel almost worse than silence. In any criminal investigation, 3 questions anchor everything. Who had motive? Who had the means? Who had the opportunity? Opportunity is the narrowest filter here. Whoever did this knew Nancy would be home alone on the night of January 31st. They knew Tommaso would drop her off and leave. They knew she would be isolated. That knowledge does not come from a stranger. It comes from proximity. From access. From familiarity with her routine. The investigation also revealed that law enforcement requested surveillance footage from 2 very specific time windows. January 11th, 9 in the evening to midnight. And January 31st, 9:30 to 11 in the morning, hours before the abduction. The January 11th request is 3 weeks before the crime. That means investigators believe something happened in the area of Nancy's home during that window that is connected to the abduction. Either the suspect was conducting surveillance, or a neighbor noticed something unusual, or cell phone location data places a suspect's device in the area and investigators are looking for visual corroboration. The specificity of that request tells you this was not spontaneous. This was planned across weeks. The January 31st morning request tells you someone may have been in the neighborhood hours before the abduction to confirm Nancy was home, a final check before executing the plan. Now motive. Financial. The ransom demand of $6 million is substantial even by the standard of a high-earning network anchor. Savannah could theoretically access that kind of money through liquidating assets, but it would require time and significant sacrifice. Does the kidnapper genuinely believe the family can produce it? Or is the number deliberately set beyond reach, giving the kidnapper a built-in justification when the exchange fails? One additional financial detail that has drawn scrutiny: Tommaso Cian held power of attorney over Nancy's finances. This is, as legal experts have confirmed, an entirely standard arrangement for aging parents. But it means he had legal authority over her accounts. In any investigation, you follow the money. Whether anyone has accessed Nancy's accounts since she disappeared is not something investigators have made public. Personal or obsessional? Did someone carry a deep grievance against Nancy, against Savannah, against the family? There is no public record of conflict. Everyone who knew Nancy describes her the same way: kind, gentle, devout. But absence of public record does not mean absence of private resentment. And then there is the possibility no one wants to say out loud. What if this was never about ransom at all? What if this was about murder, staged to look like a kidnapping? Someone wanted Nancy dead. But killing an 84-year-old woman in her own home is too traceable. So you take her. You send ransom notes to create confusion, to give law enforcement somewhere else to look, to buy time to dispose of her body and establish distance from the crime. The ransom notes are theater. The deadlines are theater. All of it is designed to make investigators chase phantom kidnappers while the real crime, premeditated homicide, goes unsolved. If that is the case, Nancy Guthrie is already gone. And has been since 2:28 in the morning on February 1st. The statistics on kidnapping victims who are not recovered within the first 48 hours are brutal. After 300 hours, which is where this case sits at 13 days, the likelihood of a living recovery drops toward a number no family wants to hear. But investigators cannot operate on probability. They have to work as if she is alive until evidence says otherwise. Because the alternative is giving up, and giving up means she stays lost. Let's close with what the evidence says, what it does not say, and what has to happen next. The blood trail indicates controlled injury, not a frenzied attack. The pacemaker disconnection, whether by disabling the device or severing its digital connection, points to deliberate action against someone with specific knowledge of her medical history. The camera destruction demonstrates prior knowledge of the home's layout. The gloves found 1.5 miles away are almost certainly the suspects, and the DNA inside them, if present, could be a direct match to someone in the National DNA Database. The Ozark Trail backpack is untraceable by brand but visually identifiable. The doorbell footage gives us a height, a build, a behavioral profile. The behavioral profile is important. Multiple former FBI agents who reviewed the footage independently reached the same conclusion. This is not a professional. The way the suspect fumbled with the camera, improvised, adapted in real time, that is the behavior of someone who has never done this before. But it is also someone who planned it across weeks, knew the house, knew the schedule, knew the vulnerabilities. The combination of long planning and amateur execution is unusual. It suggests either a first-time offender who researched obsessively but could not simulate the reality, or an accomplice who was given the plan by someone else and executed it imperfectly without fully understanding it. That accomplice theory has real traction. The person at the door behaves like someone told what to do but not necessarily why. The ransom notes, with their specific Bitcoin wallet addresses and structured language, read like they were written by someone else entirely. Someone more organized, more careful, more practiced. Two people. One who planned it. One who carried it out. If that is true, and if the person who planned it has now gone silent, either because they panicked or because they eliminated the person who actually entered that house, then law enforcement is looking for two suspects, one of whom may already be a victim. The gloves are the key to all of it. If there is human DNA, sweat, skin cells, anything, on the inside lining of those gloves, and if that DNA profile is in the National CODIS database, this case is solved. That match is an identification. That identification is an arrest. That arrest is the beginning of finding Nancy. But the gloves are sitting in an evidence locker in Pima County, Arizona, waiting to be sent to a private commercial lab in Florida because the local sheriff will not release them to Quantico. Every day that passes, the biological material inside those gloves degrades a fraction more. Every day is a risk. Every day is a choice someone is making, and right now, the person making that choice is Chris Nanos. 31,000 tips. Hundreds of FBI agents. $100,000 reward. Digital billboards in 5 major cities. The full backing of the White House. The most visible kidnapping case in America. And the evidence that could crack it open is waiting for paperwork. Nancy Ellen Guthrie. 84 years old. Mother. Grandmother. Churchgoer. Volunteer. Widow who raised 3 children alone after losing her husband at 49. A woman described by everyone who knew her as faithful, warm, fiercely loving, and sharp as ever. She was taken from her home in the early hours of February 1, 2026. Someone came to her door in the middle of the night, masked and armed, and they took her. And 13 days later, she has not been found. If you are in the Tucson area, or if you recognize the figure in that doorbell footage, or if something about this case reminds you of something you have seen, a vehicle, a face, a behavior change in someone you know, the tip lines are open 24 hours a day. The FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The Pima County Sheriff's tip line has been active throughout this investigation. The reward is $100,000. No questions asked. And if you are the person who took her, hear this. It is not too late to end this. Every hour that passes, more evidence is being processed. More connections are being made. More witnesses are coming forward. The window to make this right is closing. Let her go. Tell someone where she is. Make the call. Because whatever drove you to this moment, leaving her to die alone is a choice you will never be able to undo. We are cold case solved. We do not let cases go quiet. We are on this one and we will stay on it. If this case moved you, if you stayed through all of it, share this video right now. Post it on your page. Send it to someone in the Tucson area. Tweet it with the caption, "Somebody knows where Nancy Guthrie is." Share this until they come forward. Hashtag Find Nancy Guthrie. Hashtag Cold Case Solved. Every share is another set of eyes. Every set of eyes is another chance. And Nancy Guthrie deserves every chance we can give her. Subscribe to Cold Case Solved. Hit the bell. We will be back the moment this case breaks. Until then, Nancy, we are looking for you. We have not given up. We will not give up. Stay alert. Stay vocal. If you see something, say something.